Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Let's Have Renaissance, a podcast about writing, editing, publishing, literature, the arts, and more. I am Ito Utini.
And I'm Makaya Utini, and today we're speaking with Alexia Nader. Alexia is the author of the forthcoming multigenerational novel, The Meaning of Daughter, due out from the University of Iowa Press in late 2026. She currently lives in Miami and San Francisco. We're excited to be with her today.
Thank you for tuning in. We're excited that you're here. Why don't you also subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode with your friends?
And if you know anyone who wants to come on the podcast, please do send them our way. Also, if you haven't yet, sign up for our free newsletter where we share updates, resources, and opportunities. To support the podcast, you can make a one-time donation through our website or purchase a subscription to our blog where you'll find more premium content and resources at thedatekeepers.com. Thank you for being a part of our community.
Alexia, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a while. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Can you tell us about yourself?
Sure. I'm primarily a fiction writer at the moment. I have a book out later this year called The Meaning of Daughter. It's my first novel.
Congrats.
And thank you so much. I'm working on a second novel. And let's see, what else? I began my writing career as an arts journalist. I interviewed many authors over the years for profiles and wrote other types of book coverage, including reviews. In my early 30s, I decided to switch tracks a bit, and I got an MFA in fiction at the University of San Francisco, which is out here where I live. And I began writing the novel that's going to be published later this year.
And how long did it take you to write the novel?
Oh, wow. Well, that's kind of a hard question to answer because I don't know exactly when I began writing what you would consider a full draft, because I spent a lot of my MFA program writing sections from different voices of the characters that ended up being the protagonists of the novel, but I was writing scenes and writing parts of their histories that didn't even end up in the novel. So I think I was just trying to figure out their voices. And that took a really long time. That took almost all of my program. And then as part of my program, at the end, you do some one-on-one work with a mentor. And during that period of time, I began the draft that actually ended up, being one version of what the novel became.
Do you feel that time that you spent doing character sketches and writing sections that didn't actually make it into the final draft of the novel, do you feel that was time well spent?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I will say that, while I was doing it, I had a lot of anxiety about it because I thought, what am I doing? This doesn't have a plot. This is, what is this, right? But now looking back, for sure, I could say that was time well spent. The voice of my novel was really complicated to figure out because it follows the migration of a family from Lebanon to Haiti to the United States. And so there are so many linguistic influences in these characters and kind of layering of idioms and all of that. And it took me a while to land on the voices for each of these generations and just to figure out how they were playing with each other, how the language was working in the book, I guess I could say.
And what would you say to a writer who is currently going through a similar process, generating a lot of material and not sure what's going to end up in the final draft and maybe experiencing some anxiety over oh, wow, am I wasting my time? What would you say to an author who is in a place similar to where you were at that time?
I would say to keep going, even though, I think one of the aspects of it is since I was in an MFA program, I got a lot of feedback from other writers and from professors. And it's a lot of feedback that you get in workshops and stuff. And a lot of that feedback was about confusion, right? Because I hadn't worked out the story yet. So I would say to someone, you as a writer, you have an intuitive sense that you need to be doing something, that you need to be working on, working something out. And really, like part of the ththing that you can develop is a kind of stubbornness to stick to what that intuition is, despite what, other people might be saying about your work.
Do you think that maybe you were experiencing fear? You were afraid of misrepresenting your characters because they are from different cultures, have had different experiences. Was that part of the challenge that you were facing, or is there something more to it?
That was definitely a big challenge. The characters in my book are in the cultures that my dad's family kind of encompasses, right? So my dad's side of the family, they're Lebanese Haitians, and many of them have also at this point migrated to the United States. And I, grew up around my dad's family in Miami. My whole childhood spent time around them and listening to the way they spoke and listening to, the culture and, absorbing a lot. But that is quite different from, producing and speaking and developing a voice that could, in some part capture, what I had absorbed as a child, I suppose you could say.
And do you want to tell us a little bit more about the novel?
Yeah, sure. So the novel it's a multi-generational story and it follows three women in a family. So three generations of women. And the novel follows this family's migration over decades from Lebanon to Haiti to the United States. And each generation, so the first generation and the third generation characters are visual artists, and the middle generation character is an art dealer. So the first generation character, her story is largely follows her kind of artistic development as a painter in Haiti. And then the second generation story is about the character's journey selling her mother's art and the work of other Haitian artists in the United States, in New York in the late 70s. And the third generation story is about the daughter, the granddaughter, who is a collage artist and becomes interested in learning from her grandmother and developing her own knowledge of her history as she grapples with an unexpected pregnancy.
And I think one of the big challenges with multi-generational novels is that as the reader, like you start to get attached to one of the characters or like a cohort of characters, and then the focus shifts and you move on to the next generation and that connection is broken. What techniques have you found to efficiently establish connections between your readers and your characters and then sustain those connections so that the reader doesn't feel that they've just sort of like they've been torn away from one set of characters and thrown into another? Like, how do you keep that connection as a thread that runs from one generation to the next so that they continue to be engaged emotionally with each generation of characters?
Yeah. So I think about two things. So one is that in the stories, so the first generation character, obviously her daughter and her granddaughter are not, they haven't been born yet in the present action of that story, but her story is also told in retrospect. So the character as an older woman narrating her youth leading up to the birth of her first daughter. And so her story is told with like the eye of her becoming a mother and her relationship with her eventual relationship with her daughter. And so there's that kind of presence as she's telling the story of her youth. And then in the subsequent sections, the characters, so the grandmother figure, I mean, she comes back in each of the sections. So she's addressed in some way, and the reader finds out discovers some other side to her that she couldn't tell in her part of the story for various reasons, emotional and otherwise. And each generation is a recurring character, and you see different sides of them throughout the novel. And then the other thing is that the novel is really interested in inheritance. So, kind of the emotional inheritance that we have from our mothers and our grandmothers and, what's passed down through the generations. And so I think I really wanted to just engage the reader's curiosity around that. It's kind of like there are some decisions that the first generation figure makes that reverberate through the generations. And, as when I read stories like that, I'm always curious about what how your grandmother's relationship with your mother affects your mother's relationship with you, that type of thing, right? And so those are kind of two ways that all of the characters are really present in every part of the novel.
We always ask our guests to read an excerpt. Do you have anything you would like to share with us?
Yeah, sure. So I can read a little bit from the beginning of my novel, which I don't know if I said the title. The title is The Meaning of Daughter, and I'll read a little bit from the beginning. No matter what I began painting, the image became my daughter. The images I painted told me I must see my daughter, and not just that, but I must paint her from life, not from memory. For the first time in a long time, I didn't want to listen to them. If I couldn't cross the water all those years ago as a young woman, what made me think I could do so now? And what was waiting for me on the other side but my daughter's anger? But I knew better than to ignore them, so I called my daughter and asked her if I could live with her. She did not respond at first. I took her silence as a good sign and began to think about what I would say if she asked me why. My first answer, because I wanted to paint her, would only bring trouble. She had accused me more than once of caring more about my art than my children. Perhaps she was right. There was another answer to why I needed to go to her, but I couldn't find the words. Ask me a little later and I'll tell you, I planned to say. But she asked instead, how do you know you will like it here? You've never been outside Haiti. We both knew this was not true, but that she was saying, you are not like me. I leave, you stay. But she's wrong. The plane lifts into the air. The first moment of the earthquake runs through me again. I feel Ibrahim close, wait to see if it's time, press my St. Christopher coin into the palm of my hand until my skin changes around its grooves. The plane becomes horizontal again. I whisper to Elias, after I pass, take me back to Haiti, bury me next to my husband. My son's eyes are closed, his face relaxed. He pats my hand as if to tell me, enough, but he heard me. I open the window shade now that we are over the water. I cannot face seeing Haiti disappear behind me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed being on and talking to you both. This was great.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you so much for making the time.
Okay.
Take care.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.